The first cold breath of November drifted over Crestview University like smoke from an unseen chimney, carrying hints of cedar mulch and distant wood-burning fireplaces. Fraternity Row glowed beneath strings of Edison bulbs thrown across Greek column porches, each bulb flickering gold against new night like sparks from a campfire. Vehicles inched down Maple Drive, headlights bumping over potholes, baselines bleeding through cracked windows as guests searched for addresses scribbled on digital invites. Most settled on Sigma Tau's sprawling White House at the far cul-de-sac, where a handmade banner read Friendsgiving Bash in blocky orange paint that dripped like melting candle wax. Maya Carter parked her 2009 Subaru 2 blocks away, partly because the driveway was packed, mostly because her passenger preferred a little quiet before plunging into crowds. Ranger, an amber-eyed, blue-nosed Pitbull mix rescued from a city shelter, stood on the rear seat. Harness buckled to the latch anchor, tail drawing lazy half-moon arcs. He was 3.5. Chestnut coat dappled with lighter freckles. A face unscarred yet seasoned by miles of obedience drills Maya insisted upon since adopting him sophomore year. Tonight he wore a bandana printed with tiny pumpkins, the last in a stack Maya's mother mailed each fall. Maya unlatched the harness, and Ranger hopped out, paws crunching frosted leaves. Guitar riffs warbled overhead from a neighboring duplex. Laughter rolled across the block in bubbly gusts. Ranger's ears pivoted but remained relaxed, cataloging stimuli the way a librarian files well-worn volumes, nothing yet alarming. Maya ruffled his neck, inhaling the half-pine, half-warm fur scent that kept her anchored during chaotic semesters. "You ready to play extrovert?" she asked. Ranger's tongue lolled, the canine equivalent of a shrug. They strolled past illuminated lawns toward Sigma Tau. On the porch, two brothers in matching flannels greeted guests with overly theatrical bows, collecting coats and scribbling names on red Solo cups with black Sharpies. Maya surrendered her denim jacket, then ducked beneath the doorway string of paper leaves. Ranger followed, nose twitching at the sudden stew of aromas: cranberry punch, caramelized onions, sweat trapped inside costume sweaters. People turned at once, some startled, some charmed, by the unexpected canine attendee. A blonde in a knitted beanie squealed and asked to pet him. Ranger leaned into her palm politely. Several guests recognized him from campus therapy dog events and smiled in passing, comforted by a familiar face in the swirling noise. Sam Russo, the fraternity's social chair and Maya's lab partner in applied biostats, emerged from the kitchen juggling two trays piled high with sweet potato sliders. His grin widened at the sight of Ranger. "My favorite four-legged liability waiver," he shouted over a synthpop remix, nudging a door open with his hip. "Come on in, we rearranged the furniture, plenty of room for a hero dog." Maya rolled her eyes affectionately. Ranger had gained minor campus fame the prior semester after alerting a dorm rod to a smoldering microwave burrito at 3 a.m., saving half a floor from smoke damage. The story morphed each retelling. Some claimed Ranger dialed 911 with his nose, but the core remained. The dog noticed a danger human senses missed, and prevented it from escalating. That legend floated above him now like comic book aura, and students instinctively gave him a measure of trust seldom granted to big-headed breeds. Sigma Tau's living room had been transformed, couches pushed to walls, coffee tables lugged to the garage. An inflatable turkey wearing sunglasses sat atop a speaker tower pumping bass heavy enough to flutter posters. A hodgepodge potluck spread spanned two banquet tables, stuffing bites, mac and cheese muffins, an ambitious turducken slider station. Ranger politely ignored the food, sniffing feet and hands, absorbing individual scents into an olfactory mosaic. He registered faint tension in some early nerves. No threat. A quick glance at Maya confirmed she was chatting comfortably. He resumed perimeter exploration. Half an hour in, the party reached that molten stage where conversations melt into each other, boundaries blur, and decibel levels crest high enough to erode caution. Ranger lay near the hearth, where a flame video screensaver played on a defunct fireplace. Students drifted by offering scratches. He accepted with diplomatic neutrality. Maya swapped academic gossip with Sam. sipping spiced sparkling cider because her cross-country season resumed in 2 weeks and Coach Dixon enforced a strict no-alcohol pledge for distance runners. Somewhere between the sweet potato slider wave and the arrival of a tray of fluorescent Jell-O shots shaped like maple leaves, a subtle shift threaded the room. It began with a spilled drink, raspberry vodka punch glugging onto the hardwood, followed by cheers from a circle engaged in King's Cup. Ranger's ears cocked at the cheers. Not in alarm but attentiveness. Then came the moment his skull stilled. Hackles rising like faint static, a sound beneath the soundtrack. A broken rhythm of breath, wet, labored, floating from the shadowed den adjacent to the kitchen. No one else noticed. The doorway to that den was half blocked by a keg cooler. And host traffic drifted elsewhere. But Ranger's nose flared, catching undertones of ethanol sharper than spilled cocktails. The reek of oversaturated blood exhaled through shallow lungs. He rose, nails clicking. Maya saw the motion and followed. Weaving through dancers, Ranger slipped past the keg cooler into dim light cast by a single table lamp. The den's couch, a plaid relic, pressed against brick wall. Behind it, half obscured by a fallen blanket, lay a figure in an oversized varsity hoodie. Body crooked in unnatural sprawl. Cheek pressed to carpet as if listening for secret messages. Eyes half-lidded, pupils minuscule pinpricks. Breath, shallow inhalations through parted lips, each followed by a rattling exhale. "Hey, you okay?" Maya asked. But the student, male, maybe 19, freckles on one cheek, didn't stir. Ranger whined, stepping beside him, nudging the hoodie sleeve with his snout. No response. He turned, issued a quick bark, sharp, echoing. The party's sonic ocean swallowed it at first. But a couple near the hallway looked over. Maya knelt, fingers to the student's wrist. Pulse weak, but present. She remembered a first aid module from a freshman health seminar. Watch for puking. Call for help. She started to ask for a phone. But Ranger moved faster. He trotted back into the living room, nose nudging ankles, whining in crescendo. When cheers drowned him out, he pawed at Sam's jeans, claws tapping insistently. Sam twisted around, eyebrows raised. Ranger seized a corner of a flannel jacket draped over a chair, an impulse he rarely exhibited, and tugged. The chair tipped, spilling the jacket and catching Sam's attention. Maya's voice carried over the music then. "Urgent. Sam, call 911. People sobered instantly, parted to reveal Maya supporting the unconscious student's shoulders. Ranger squeezed between them, licking the boy's ear, a canine restart button that sometimes spurred responsiveness. This time, no luck. Sam's roommate Greg killed the music. Abrupt silence as though someone dropped the world's volume fader. Panic-toned conversation erupted. Maya checked for vomiting risk, rolled the student slightly to keep airway clear, then repeated the call for medical help. A sorority freshman pressed her phone to Maya's ear. 911 dispatch crackled. Maya relayed vitals she could glean, a fading pulse. Clammy skin. Ranger stayed pressed against the boy's ribcage, warmth radiating. When the boy's breaths hitched into brief apnea, Ranger nuzzled him until a gasp returned. Campus police and EMTs arrived within 7 minutes. Bodycam footage later reviewed for the incident report captured the scene. LED lights swirling across a room of stunned students. A Pitbull wearing a pumpkin bandana lying sphinx-like, gaze following every medic's move. One EMT, Carla Mendez, navigated around Ranger with studied calm, dropping to her knees for an airway adjunct. Blood alcohol sensor beeped high. They loaded the student, ID later confirmed as freshman physics major Jonah Reyes, onto a gurney. Ranger rising to follow until Maya's quiet "Stay" halted him at the doorframe. Paramedics performed rapid sequence intubation in the ambulance bay. The bodycam caught Ranger in the background of the footage, visible through back doors, sitting on the driveway asphalt. Eyes glowing under flashing strobes. Still as sentinel. A campus police officer tried coaxing him inside to reduce chaos. But the dog refused to budge until Maya appeared, surging adrenaline finally letting her knees quake. She clipped Ranger's leash and whispered, "He's in good hands." Ranger stepped into heel position, though the glance he threw at the departing ambulance showed reluctance like a thread of anchor rope stretched to snapping. Word of Ranger's detection shot through group chats before sirens faded. Students stood in clusters on the lawn. Cups abandoned on railings. The chilly air shock sober. Some offered details to officers. Others simply watched Ranger. Gratitude etched on earnest faces. The blonde beanie wearer who'd first petted him earlier wiped mascara streaks, saying over and over, he knew. He just knew. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Jonah's roommate who'd ridden to the hospital. ICU. Stable so far. They said dogs saved his life. Relief struck Maya like a hammer, followed by water, painful, then cleansing. She knelt, hugged Ranger's neck, feeling his heart drumming steady. Good boy. She breathed into fur that smelled faintly of cedar chips and party air. As campus police wrapped statements, a local news van rolled up, sensors swirling blue light across dorm facades. A reporter hopped out, microphone at the ready, but officers cordoned them off. Maya flashed back to the microwave incident press scrum. She knew the script. Ranger would be painted hero again. Pitbull stereotype chiseled into new shape. But tonight she felt deeper gratitude. Her dog's instincts had cut through a cacophony of distraction that swallowed human perception whole. Whatever headlines spun tomorrow, facts remained. Ranger tuned into a single failing breath beneath party beats and refused to be ignored. Inside Sam's living room, cleanup volunteers mopped punch and set aside half-finished plates. Someone restarted music, but volume low, songs acoustic. Ranger, finally allowing tension to slough, curled near Maya's feet as she sat on a repositioned couch. Sam delivered hot tea laced with honey. Apology in his eyes. I thought we had enough sober monitors checking on people, he said quietly. Maya shook her head. You did your best. Alcohol's unpredictable. She stroked Ranger's back, feeling a tight knot between shoulder blades ease under her thumb. Tomorrow she'd schedule a vet massage. As midnight dipped into 2 a.m., partygoers trickled out. Subdued goodbyes replaced earlier jubilance. Maya walked Ranger to the Subaru and sat behind the wheel, letting the engine idle while her pulse steadied. She replayed the scene in the den. Ranger's pricked ears. The sharp whine he produced. The jacket tug. She'd read articles on dogs detecting diabetic crashes, seizures, even certain cancers. But alcohol poisoning detection? Tomorrow she would email Dr. Felicia Lang at the Veterinary Behavioral Lab. Maybe Ranger could contribute to a study. The drive home was quiet. Street lights casting interlocking halos on wet pavement. Ranger rested his head on the center console, eyelids drooping yet still tracking Maya's shifting posture. She reached across, tracing the line of his whiskers. Thank you for hearing what we didn't. Ranger exhaled a satisfied sigh. The universal dog sign for day well done. And closed his eyes. Down the corridor of Crestview Medical Center's intensive care wing, fluorescent ceiling panels hummed like distant cicadas. Soft yet incessant. The same antiseptic lullaby that wraps every hospital night. Maya Carter pushed through the double doors at dawn. Hair still smelling of the cedar sage rinse she'd used to scrub party smoke from her scalp. Ranger trotted at her side. Bandana freshly laundered but faded one shade paler after a 2 a.m. wash cycle. A volunteer badge labeled therapy dog in training hung from his collar. An impromptu pass hurriedly granted by the charge nurse who'd recognized him from the newsflash playing on cafeteria TVs. The station clerk waved them toward ICU 2, where Jonah Reyes lay propped under soft blue lights designed to soothe retinas straining against data monitors. An airflow ventilator stood silent now, extubation completed an hour earlier, but the cannula feeding humidified oxygen still framed his face. His roommate, Dev Patel, sat vigil on a vinyl chair, eyes bloodshot yet alive with relief. He brightened when Ranger stepped in, offering a half-smile between exhaustion creases. Doc said blood alcohol dropped to 0.38. Dev whispered, another hour and he trailed off, but the ellipsis hovered heavy. Jonah's eyelids fluttered, consciousness cruising shallow waves. Ranger approached in slow motion, each pawfall soundless on antiseptic tile. He rested his chin at mattress edge, bringing warm breath within inches of Jonah's limp hand. A pause, then the fingers twitched, curling reflexively into fur as though retrieving an anchor lost at sea. A soft exhale puffed from Jonah's lips, first aware sigh since collapse, then 2 syllables hoarse and broken. Good boy. Maya's throat closed, She pivoted to wipe a tear before it smudged the plastic visitor shield pinned to her sweater. Nurses clustered at the doorway, witnessing the exchange like parishioners at dawn mass. One swiped moisture from beneath her mask, then cleared her throat, returning to charting. An hour later, with Jonah stable and dozing naturally, Maya slipped down to the lobby for coffee. Ranger flopped at her feet, accepting fragments of stale almond biscotti from a vending machine feast. Television monitors above the information desk cycled between local traffic reports and a breaking news banner. Rescue Pitbull saves college student from alcohol poisoning, lab studies to follow. Maya winced. She appreciated the awareness but dreaded sensational edits. Ranger performing CPR. Ranger fetching IV bags with his teeth. The truth was miraculous enough. A dog tuned to subtle shifts in breath and scent. Insistent enough to pierce human obliviousness. Her phone erupted with notifications, emails from student paper editors, voicemails from regional news anchors, and a text string from Dr. Felicia Lang of the Veterinary Behavioral Lab requesting immediate collaboration. Lang's message bristled with keystroke energy. We've been collecting data on canines detecting hypoglycemia via isoprene exhalation. Ethanol metabolites produce distinct profile. Ranger may have innate threshold recognition. Can we schedule controlled trials? Funding available. Maya thumb-typed agreement, adding that Ranger's physical and mental well-being came first. Lang responded within seconds. Absolutely. Low-stress sessions. Positive reinforcement only. Across campus, the rumor mill spun. By midday, a petition titled, "Adopt Canine Medical Alert Teams at Crestview University," accumulated 2,000 signatures. Biology major Serena Cho designed an infographic explaining how volatile organic compounds in breath correlate with blood alcohol concentration. The graphic went viral on the university subreddit, accompanied by Ranger's pumpkin bandana photo. Meanwhile, campus safety committees convened emergency meetings. Fraternity leaders scrambled to review party protocols, anxious to avoid administrative wrath. At Sigma Tau's chapter house, Social Chair Sam Russo drafted an open letter admitting lapse in monitoring but lauding Ranger's intervention, pledging to donate party fund proceeds to the Student Emergency Medical Fund. He emailed the letter to Maya for feedback. She suggested adding a sponsorship line for therapy dog training scholarships, and Sam agreed. That evening, Dr. Felicia Lang arrived at Crestview's Vet Sciences Annex. Room converted into an olfaction lab with stainless steel scent wheels and a mass spectrometry adjunct humming like a futuristic hummingbird. Ranger trotted circles, sniffing new air currents. Lang greeted him with Neil-level respect, letting him sample her latex-free gloves before offering a chunk of dehydrated turkey. She explained the protocol. Sample jars containing exhaled breath condensate from volunteers at varying BAC levels. None harmful. All anonymized. Ranger would select the jar spiking above a certain threshold. Rewarded each accurate indication. Sessions would last 10 minutes. Nothing more. Maya stood behind a site-blocked partition, hard drumming as trials began. On first round, Ranger paused at each scent port, nose twitching, then sat before jar 3, BAC 0.20 sample. Clicker sounded. Treat delivered. 5 rounds repeated. Ranger correctly flagged high BAC jars every time. Accuracy 100%. Lang's brows rose above safety goggles. She lowered thresholds incrementally. 0.15. 0.10. Ranger adjusted. Still near perfect. By final round, he identified 0.08 with 8 of 10 accuracy, statistically stunning given minimal training. Lang turned to Maya, eyes bright. Your dog has a gift, she said. More crucially, he has the drive to communicate it. She proposed a longitudinal study pairing Ranger with instrumentation, training him to trigger an alert device. Maya agreed. On condition Ranger's workload remained limited, he was still a companion first. Hero second. News of the lab results leaked, fueling media tempests. Cable science shows requested segments. The university's public affairs office created a press packet, featuring high-resolution shots of Ranger seated next to scent wheels. Headlines polished stereotypes. Unlikely Pitbull savior, 4-legged breathalyzer. Maya fought to preserve nuance. She insisted interviews emphasize responsible drinking culture and canine welfare. Back at Crestview Medical, Jonah recovered quickly. 2 days post-incident he transferred to a regular ward. Memory patchy. Gratitude enormous. A campus counseling liaison arrived with brochures on alcohol safety. Jonah listened. But what he asked for first was to see Ranger again. He had dreamed glimpses of the dog tugging his sleeve. Lighthouse in a storm he barely remembered. On Friday afternoon, Maya and Ranger returned. Jonah's mother, flown in from Tucson, clasped Maya's hands so hard knuckles whitened. Tears spilled as she thanked the dog, voice cracking on every other word. Ranger nudged her elbows, smoothing anguish into simple relief. Jonah sat propped on pillows, IV line delivering electrolytes. He reached out. Ranger pressed his head into Jonah's palm. The room exhaled. A nurse snapped a photo. Permission granted, capturing a war paint of freckles on Jonah's face softened by humble awe. Saturday's football game halftime showcased Ranger on the Jumbotron, standing midfield beside Maya and Coach Dixon, who publicly acknowledged that even an alcohol-free distance runner needed reminding of vigilance in social settings. The stadium roared. Ranger tilted his head at the thunderous wave, tail wagging half-mast. Fireworks burst overhead. He didn't flinch. Noise desensitization from prior therapy training paying dividends. Post-halftime, Student Government Association President Neha Malik announced a partnership with the Veterinary Behavioral Lab, a pilot canine medical alert team program placing trained dogs at large student events. The crowd cheered again. Alumni donors pledged funding before third quarter ended. By Monday, a task force formed. Maya, Dr. Lang, EMS Captain Carla Mendez, and Residence Life Director Howard Sloan. Meetings stretched late into nights. They drafted policies, handler certification, canine rest intervals, designated quiet rooms at parties. Legal counsel reviewed liability clauses. Noted Ranger's precedent of beneficial intervention lessened risk. Insurance carriers indicated favorable terms given reduced ambulance calls anticipated. Amid bureaucratic momentum, Maya shielded Ranger from burnout. She scheduled off days at Crestview State Park, where fallen pecans littered trails and Ranger could sprint unburdened by hero titles. On one such morning, frost filming the pond's edge, Maya practiced recall drills. Ranger bounded across frosted grass, breath puffing white clouds. Maya whistled. He pivoted mid-leap, returning with comet speed, skidding to a perfect sit. She laughed, melting tension. Winter break approached. Jonah returned to classes, now honorary liaison for the pilot program. He and Ranger became on-campus ambassadors, visiting freshman dorms with interactive demos. Ranger sniffing sealed canisters, sitting when alcohol threshold detected. Students gaped, then peppered Maya with questions about canine sense of smell, metabolic rates, safe party strategies. The environment of fear once surrounding alcohol poisoning tragedies shifted into proactive awe. But change invites friction. An editorial in the state's leading newspaper questioned use of animals where personal responsibility should suffice. A pundit labeled it, outsourcing common sense to canines. Social media threads ignited. Some hailed Ranger as proof of Pitbull potential. Others warned of animals policing human pleasure. Maya responded in a campus letter. Ranger is not a substitute for accountability. He's a backup for when accountability falters. Biology doesn't negotiate with regret. Amid debate, Dr. Lang's interim study results arrived. Dogs trained on ethanol metabolite profiles using Ranger's protocols achieved 87% accuracy at 0.10 BAC detection after 6 weeks, outperforming current portable breath sensors in noisy environments. A peer-reviewed journal fast-tracked publication. The data silenced many critics and attracted federal research grants. By spring, 2 more dogs, Lighthouse, a gangly Labrador mix, and Cove, a sable shepherd, joined the pilot team. They rotated through events under Mason Hall's soaring atrium, each wearing vests wired to vibro-pagers that buzzed handlers upon detection. Success metrics mounted. 3 alcohol toxicity intercepts. 1 diabetic hypoglycemia alert. Countless de-escalated panic episodes. EMS callouts for severe intoxication dropped 30% compared to previous spring semester. A culmination arrived in April. The inaugural Ranger Symposium on Canine Scent Detection for Campus Safety. Academics, EMS chiefs, student leaders, and therapy dog orgs converged. Ranger opened the ceremony trotting beside Jonah, now fully recovered, the two sharing a grin that stretched wider than the keynote stage. Maya delivered the plenary talk, equal parts science, storytelling, and caution, closing with the line, "Listen to what your dog is smelling. Your life might depend on it." Thunderous applause rattled auditorium seats. Ranger, sensing climax, let out a single, polite bark. Laughter erupted. The moderator declared it official, symposium to repeat annually. That night, walking back to their apartment beneath blossoming dogwoods, Maya pondered the arc from stray shelter intake photo to campus sentinel. She brushed Ranger's flank, said, "You know this doesn't end here, right?" Ranger yawned, a wide, jaw-creaking gesture that read like both agreement and gentle reminder, "Rest first. Heroics later." They reached the stoop, moon casting silver lace across porch boards. Maya unlocked the door, tossed keys in the ceramic bowl, and set Ranger's pumpkin bandana aside, retiring it for a new design stitched with the campus crest and the word alert. As Ranger settled on his memory foam mat, breathing deep, Maya opened her laptop, drafting long overdue acknowledgments for the grant proposal. She typed, "To Ranger, who taught us that some alarms come on 4 paws." On cue, Ranger exhaled a content rumble. Eyelids fluttering, all signals clear. Perimeter safe. For now. Back on Fraternity Row, students filed out of a sober monitor training workshop, carrying pamphlets stamped with Ranger's silhouette. Sigma Tau's new social chair rehearsed call and response protocols beside a cooler stocked with color-coded mocktails. In the distance, the campus clock chimed 10. Somewhere inside a dorm, laughter spiked, music thumped, and a dog, maybe Cove, maybe Lighthouse, pricked its ears, ready to translate the invisible language of metabolite whispers into action if needed. Crestview University had changed, not because one dog cured recklessness, but because his insistence on a single breathless night launched a conversation impossible to ignore. And across quad lawns greening under new spring, the next generation of canine guardians stretched, yawned, and waited for the scent of crisis that would call them from the ordinary into the necessary. Just as Ranger once answered a silent plea coursing out from behind a couch. Beneath music, through crowded oblivion, into his unerring nose and willing heart. Morning sunlight the color of raw honey slanted across the departure concourse of Lincoln International as Maya adjusted the sling bag draped over her shoulder and gave the leash a gentle flick. Ranger trotted at her knee wearing a fresh navy vest embroidered with 2 simple words that felt weightier than most credentials, National Cert Tour. His pumpkin bandana had been retired to a shadow box back at the apartment. In its place gleamed a crisp kerchief stitched with the intertwined emblems of Crestview University and the Veterinary Behavioral Lab, Dog Nose, EKG Pulse, and a stylized molecular model of ethanol metabolites arrayed in a circle like a halo. The journey ahead spanned 6 weeks of conferences, Senate hearings, and live demonstrations in packed arenas from Austin to Albany. For Maya it felt equal parts privilege and pilgrimage, the chance to share field data while fighting myths that still clung to Pitbull silhouettes like stubborn static. For Ranger it was work of a more elemental kind, reading the air, mapping the invisible, taking one careful breath after another and translating chemistry into movement humans could not ignore. The first stop was Phoenix, where the Southwestern Veterinary Symposium had booked them for an opening night keynote followed by lab rotations with police K9 scent specialists. Maya filed the carrier paperwork, easing them past TSA with the practiced cadence of a handler who could walk this gauntlet in sleep. Ranger yielded his paws for swab tests, endured the body wand, then patted down the jet bridge tail wagging in low, easy arcs. Zen amid the clamor of rolling suitcases and half-awake business chatter. 37,000 feet above patchwork Midwest farmland, Maya cracked her laptop and pulled up the latest white paper draft slated for distribution to state lawmakers. The top margin bore Jonah's suggested subtitle, a line both earnest and cheeky. It takes a nose to know. She scrolled past tables of comparative accuracy, canine alerts versus breathalyzers in high-noise environments. Canine alerts versus smartwatch blood oxygen proxies, and settled on the section she feared would prove most polarizing, funding mechanisms. She'd proposed a modest student fee allocation, supplemented by voluntary alumni donations, to keep canine teams operational without draining emergency medical budgets. Early feedback from administrators was cautiously optimistic. But the upcoming Senate hearing would test real appetite for innovation. On the layover in Denver, Ranger spotted Lieutenant Carla Mendez from Crestview EMS across the terminal. Carla waved a manila folder overhead like a victory flag. She'd taken vacation days to testify before the Arizona House Public Safety Committee. Her plane left in 30 minutes. Maya quick-stepped across the terrazzo. Ranger glued beside her. Carla hugged Maya, crouched to greet Ranger with a scratch under the chin. She produced a lab report sealed in protective plastic. Residual ethanol molecular spectra from Ranger's scent wheel trials. Annotated in green marker. Hard numbers speak louder than heroic anecdotes. She said. Ranger sneezed lightly, maybe dust. Maybe commentary, and Maya laughed. Feeling camaraderie tighten like a security harness. They exchanged itineraries: Phoenix, Sacramento, Baton Rouge, Richmond, and parted with promise to debrief via nightly group chat. Phoenix met them with heat that shimmered above taxi lanes. But the conference center offered climate control and desert light streaming through skylights. During their debut session, Maya took the podium while Ranger sat center stage on a low pedestal cushioned with memory foam. She recounted the Sigma Tau party night in vivid detail, ambient decibel readings, timeline of intervention, and let the room settle into the silence that followed. That collective recognition of how easily things might have tipped the other way. Then she pivoted to data, charts, spectrograms, training protocols, as graphs floated across triple-wide screens. Ranger performed a live scent demonstration. 2 identical satchels laid 10 feet apart. One holding ethanol-infused gauze at 0.08 equivalent. The other a placebo. Ranger sniffed the air currents in a leisurely arc. Paused before the first bag. Sat, and lifted a paw. The auditorium erupted in applause that felt less like stadium fervor and more like a communal exhale of surprise turning into belief. Across the next days, Ranger shared space with bomb-sniffing Malinois and cadaver-locating bloodhounds. Teachers of different dialects in the same old language. Trainers swapped stories about canine precision. A Labrador that could detect minute traces of C4 from 30 paces. A Spaniel that located invasive lanternfly eggs in shipping pallets. Maya listened, notebook filling with cross-disciplinary tricks, operant conditioning schedules, recovery day protocols, scent discrimination games using essential oil wheels. In return, she offered insights on metabolite threshold curves and party environment distractions. Ranger soaked up the mingled scents of nitrates, accelerants, adrenal sweat, coffee breath, hand sanitizer. By conference close, he'd earned an honorary patch bestowed during closing ceremonies, Scent Work Ambassador, which Maya sewed onto his vest that evening while Ranger snored in contented exhaustion. From Arizona they flew to Sacramento for the first major legislative showdown. The state senator spearheading the Campus Safety Innovation Bill was a tall woman with river-stone eyes named Yvonne Calder. She greeted them outside committee chambers and admitted she used to fear pitbulls after a childhood nip incident. But Ranger's calm visage short-circuited old circuits. During testimony, Maya spoke with courtroom steady cadence, quoting peer-reviewed accuracy results. Carla Mendez played M's bodycam footage, audio gated to isolate Ranger's initial bark beneath party din. Jonah stepped forward next, trimmed hair and blazer lending gravitas that belied the faint memory of an ICU ventilator. He described waking to the weight of a dog's skull on his mattress, the sensation of fur between numb fingers. When Jonah finished, Ranger, resting at his feet, lifted his head, tongue flicking Jonah's knuckles. A collective murmur flickered through the chamber, even opponents leaned forward. Opposition arguments focused on budget creep and liability. Would universities be sued if a dog misidentified intoxication? Maya countered with compiled statistics. 0 false positives leading to punitive action. Dogs served only as early warning systems prompting medical evaluation. Insurance actuarial models, she noted, already showed decreased hospitalization payouts where canine teams operated. Senator Calder asked for citation. Maya supplied a QR-coded dossier. When the vote came, the bill advanced from committee 9-1. In Baton Rouge the tone was hotter. literally and rhetorically. Lobbyists for beverage distributors framed the program as moral panic threatening social freedom. Maya stayed on message. Dogs saved lives. Dogs didn't judge. A retired sheriff who'd lost his nephew to alcohol poisoning testified via Zoom, voice shivering as he thanked Ranger for sparing another family his grief. The subcommittee postponed decision for further study, but directed the state university system to pilot one canine team. Small steps. Maya reminded herself Tidewater sculpted canyons by persistence, not force. Between hearings they visited high schools, STEM camps, and recovery advocacy centers. Ranger demonstrated scent alerts while kids in purple hoodies squealed. Counselors quietly slipped parents pamphlets on binge drinking risks. At a downtown Nashville venue, Ranger flagged an intoxicated adult volunteer during a televised segment. EMTs stationed backstage checked vitals and discovered early-stage ketoacidosis. Unrelated to alcohol but equally dangerous. The incident widened conversation. Canine biosensing could dovetail with broader health monitoring, hypoglycemia, anaphylaxis, seizure onset. Research grants multiplied. Back at Crestview, Cove and Lighthouse held the fort. Reports trickled into the consortium Slack. Hypothermia alert at an outdoor winter mixer. Atrial fibrillation episode detected in a visiting alumnus thanks to Lighthouse's persistent nudging. Maya forwarded the anecdotes to legislators as living footnotes. 6 weeks blurred to 9. Ranger's itinerary ended at Albemarle Hall in Richmond, where the Mid-Atlantic State Senate gathered to mark passage of omnibus education funding. The canine program line item hung by a thread. Lobbyists swirled in marbled foyers. One tried to pet Ranger without asking, and Ranger sidestepped with diplomatic neutrality. Maya gently reminded him of the vest rule, ask first. The lobbyist muttered under his breath, but a staffer nearby shot Maya a grateful glance. Courtesies mattered. Inside the Senate gallery, speeches droned. When Maya's turn arrived, she tempered data with story. She spoke of cold November breath, of a dog threading through base and beer haze to find one faltering heartbeat. She described the smell of relief in a hospital corridor when that heartbeat regained rhythm. She ended by inviting senators to lean close, to breathe out slowly and imagine a dog's nose capturing every molecule. If we have technology that listens to our body's whispers, she said, shouldn't we answer before the body screams? The chamber fell silent except for Ranger's soft huff, almost a sigh reminding everyone to keep breathing. The measure passed, not unanimously, but decisively enough to unlock matching funds. Maya shook Senator Calder's hand amid flashes from press photographers. Outside, dusk spilled coral light across Capitol steps. Ranger sat, watching pigeons swirl up against the facade. City smells curling in eddies around him, diesel, warm pretzel carts, damp marble, victory. They flew home the next morning. Crestview welcomed them with a student-led banner strung across Alumni Quad. Welcome home Ranger and Maya, our nose. The pilot program was no longer pilot, it was a permanent fixture christened Guardian Paws. The university dedicated a quiet garden nook between the biomedical library and the old chapel, installing a bronze bench sculpture of a dog mid-alert, a tribute to Ranger and his successors. Beside the sculpture a digital kiosk displayed real-time statistics, a reminder that behind the symbolism lived measurable outcomes. Commencement week arrived draped in wisteria blossoms. Jonah, fully recovered and sporting honors cords, was selected as valedictorian after submitting an essay titled, Interruption as Grace. On graduation morning, Ranger wore a miniature mortarboard affixed with elastic, though it slid cockeyed whenever he shook. The stadium hummed with families. Maya sat in the faculty section beside Dr. Lang. Heart swelled so large it left little room for nerves. When Jonah approached the lectern, he paused to scratch Ranger between the shoulders. A ripple of awe washed through the bleachers. Jonah began with a physics anecdote, entropy and order, then pivoted. Sometimes the universe hands you chaos in a solo cup, he said, voice steady. Sometimes salvation arrives on 4 paws and refuses to be ignored. He thanked Maya, the EMS team, his classmates. We celebrate milestones tonight because Ranger heard what we didn't. My future exists in the space opened by his vigilance. The crowd rose in ovation. Ranger barked once, sharp, joyful, Cameras captured the moment. Photos traveled across national wires within the hour under captions like Pitbull pomp and circumstance. After tassels turned, Maya and Ranger slipped away to the quiet garden. Fireflies blinked in nascent summer dusk. Maya removed Ranger's vest, letting him roll in clipped grass. Snapping at glowing insects, she lay on the bronze bench, exhaustion mixing with pride. Somewhere down the path Jonah laughed with friends. Laughter trailed upward like sparks. In the months that followed, Guardian Paws drafted a white label implementation kit so other campuses could launch programs without starting from scratch. Budget templates, training contacts, policy language reviewed by attorneys. Federal grants cited the Ranger Symposium research. Within 3 years, 24 universities had at least one certified ethanol alert team. Insurance stats showed a nationwide 5% drop in campus alcohol toxicity admissions. The Association of American Universities issued a best practices memo calling canine medical alert teams a promising complement to student health initiatives. Ranger's muzzle silvered, stride slowing into measured trot. Maya adjusted schedules, more river trail strolls, fewer cross-country flights. He still attended local orientations, demonstrating alerts in cool gyms a few times each semester. On his 10th birthday, Crestview dedicated a conference room in the Veterinary Behavioral Lab as the Ranger Carter Research Suite, walls lined with gas chromatography equipment funded by grants he'd inspired. They cut a cake shaped like a scent wheel. Ranger enjoyed a dog-safe cupcake with yogurt frosting. One crisp October evening, after freshman orientation, Ranger lingered near the bronze garden bench longer than usual. Gazing at the glowing campus beyond, Maya sat beside him, hand warm on graying fur. She whispered that they'd done enough. That younger noses now patrolled party air. Ranger leaned into her thigh, exhaled a long sigh reminiscent of Harbor's legacy across time and circumstance. That night he slept deeper than usual. Chin on paws, dreams flickering beneath eyelids. Seasons cycled. Ranger, at nearly 12, chose a final quiet dawn to drift beyond. Maya found him on the porch, body curled like a comma ready to release a sentence into the next line. She cradled his head, tears soaking freckled fur, thanking him for 10,000 breaths safeguarded. News spread. Campus newspaper printed a black ink silhouette of a pitbull raising a paw against a background of stylized audio wave. A week later, the Board of Trustees voted unanimously to expand Guardian Paws nationwide under a new moniker, the Ranger Initiative for Canine Crisis Detection. The first scholarship funded a student handler named Felicia Saunders and her rescue dog, Beacon. At the dedication ceremony, Jonah, now a doctoral candidate in biomedical engineering, unveiled a prototype wearable harness integrating breath sensor microchips that complemented canine detection. He credited Ranger as co-inventor in his patent filings, citing non-human collaborator in the margin. Maya eventually joined the institute full-time, training new teams, lecturing on olfaction science, and consulting for hospitals exploring canine-assisted diagnostics. On her office wall hung 2 framed items: the blood alcohol spectrogram that Carla presented at committee, and Ranger's first bandana, pumpkin motif faded to soft rust. Visitors often asked which one she treasured more. She always smiled. "One is the proof we needed," she said. "The other is the reason we went looking." Years later, during the 5th Ranger Symposium, a student rose during Q&A and asked what single factor made the program possible. Maya paused, scanning the auditorium where dogs lay in calm semicircles at handlers' feet, their noses twitching at popcorn smells. She answered, "Listening to what we can't hear, and trusting the messengers who speak without words." Ranger's image lit the jumbotron behind her, tail mid-wag, eyes bright, nose forever attuned to crises yet unseen. Outside, dusk pooled violet in the quadrangle. Somewhere, a party's bassline thumped. Laughter shot skyward, and a young dog, Beacon, Haven, or some future guardian, lifted its head, sampling the wind for the faintest betrayal of breath. Ready, as ever, to turn one unremarkable moment into the hinge on which dozens of futures might pivot toward morning. And though Ranger's paws would never again tap campus sidewalks, every heartbeat spared by a timely canine alert pulsed with echoes of that first November night. When a dog in a pumpkin bandana decided noise could not drown necessity. And the world, finally, listened.